Happy holidays, everybody, and Tony here with my review of Alexander von Zemlinsky's Der Zwerg, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. The conductor was Donald Runnicles, the production was done by Tobias Kratzer, the sets and costumes were done by Rainer Zellmeyer, the lights were handled by Stefan Woinke, the assistant directors were Silke Sense and Eva Maria Abelein, the chorus master was Jeremy Bynes, and the dramaturg was Sebastian Hanusa. I mainly came across this opera by complete chance, as I did with the original source material, Oscar Wilde's The Birthday of the Infanta. And as I read through the story, both in the opera as well as in the original source material, I have come to be acquainted with what the themes were with Oscar Wilde's The Birthday of the Infanta and Alexander von Zemlinsky's Der Zwerg. And the most important ones to me is how unrequited love is entangled, let alone entwined, with physical appearance, and how much that is catalyzed with the two pivotal protagonists of Donna Clara, the Infanta or the Spanish princess, and the titular dwarf, with Donna Clara only appreciating the superficial and everything that is surface level that seems very beautiful to her, but not really admiring the dwarf's inward qualities and how well he tries to treat her and tries to behave toward her, considering that the dwarf is a lot more of a pet toward the Infanta and is basically more of a plaything and a toy toward her rather than an actual human being with actual feelings and who really feels a lot more for her than any other prince or noble who would have had the same sentiments for her. On top of that, the main difference between The Birthday of the Infanta by Oscar Wilde and The Dwarf, or Der Zwerg, by Alexander von Zemlinsky, is that the Infanta, or Donna Clara, is 12 years old in the original source material, whereas with the opera, she's aged up to be 18 years old. And this is because the dwarf is presumed to be an adult, a consenting adult at that. So it would have been very weird for a consenting adult to want to be in a relationship with a 12-year-old girl, because that would be totally wrong. Hence, Donna Clara's age in the opera version is pushed up to 18 so that at least she could be a consenting adult, let alone a consenting young adult, to make the dwarf's claim of wanting her love a lot more legitimate. The basic plot of this opera goes like this. Donna Clara, the Infanta, or the Princess of Spain, is celebrating her 18th birthday, and there are a lot of her guests and friends who come to the party in full swing. Don Esteban, the major domo, Gita, the head maid, and the three maids all prepare all the great festivities that are about to occur, as well as what presents Donna Clara is about to receive. One of the presents happens to be a dwarf brought in from the Middle East to be sold as a slave. And once the dwarf is brought in, he is totally enchanted by Donna Clara's loveliness and beauty. However, Donna Clara, her friends, Gita, the maids, and Don Esteban perceive him as nothing more than a sideshow attraction, even when he is talented by singing her all of these lovely songs and dares himself to prove himself to be a fine artist with being such a fine musician of the court. He is still mocked at because of how deformed he is and does not appear normal like every other human being. Even Don Esteban, Gita, and the three maids are totally aware that the dwarf should never approach any mirror because he would end up being totally ashamed of himself. Once alone, Donna Clara and the dwarf seem to have a connection going on. Donna Clara seems to be very amused by the dwarf because of how strange he looks, even if he is trying so desperately hard to win over her and claim himself to be a prince or a knight who has this stout heart, this steadfast heart, and is so willing to fight for her and conquer every obstacle for her. Donna Clara, on the other hand, thinks that his gestures are really adorable, really cute, and all play, and all in all, a great sense of amusement for her. She even commands Gita that the dwarf should have a really good look at himself in the mirror to realize how misshapen, deformed, and hideous he looks like on the outside. As the dwarf and Donna Clara are dancing, she gives him a white rose. To the dwarf, this means that Donna Clara is in love with him and really hopes that they can start a wonderfully loving relationship together. However, under Donna Clara's command, Gita brings in a mirror for the dwarf to see himself and his reflection, and to his shock, he sees his own deformed reflection staring back at him and believes that this is some type of phantom, this is some type of ghoul who wants to take over his life, not realizing that this is actually his reflection. When the dwarf confronts Donna Clara about his reflection, she blatantly tells him that all of this is true. There are no smoke and mirrors. This is really his reflection, and what she really thinks of him is that the dwarf is nothing more than a ridiculous-looking, pitiful, and misshapen creature that she would never ever dream of being in a relationship with, even if he were the last man on earth. He even tries to remind her about the white rose she gave him, but Donna Clara spurns him and continues to taunt him, thus reminding him of his ugliness and misshapen form. The dwarf slowly dies of a broken heart. And Donna Clara doesn't seem to be fazed about this, let alone affected. She just thinks, he's dead, he's already broken, I am in no need for him anymore, and ends up just walking away back to her party to enjoy herself. The only person who is there to console him, even during his dying hour, is Gita, who pities him and even tried so desperately hard to warn him not to look at himself in the mirror, but it's too late. The dwarf dies of a broken heart, and Gita is left by his side. So this one-act opera, despite being roughly an hour and 30 minutes, still packs in a good amount of tragedy just because of how callous Donna Clara is toward the dwarf, even with the dwarf trying to show that he really means well and his feelings toward Donna Clara are legitimate. However, she just sees him as nothing more than a pathetic plaything, and once he ends up dying in front of her, she just wants nothing to do with him and ends up going back to her friends in the party. And going back to what I said previously about this story being about unrequited love, as well as how it is correlated with the overall outside appearance and how it also affects someone on the inside, this also shows the juxtaposition of Donna Clara preferring the more superficially attractive things instead of the dwarf wanting someone with depth and someone with internal beauty, but ends up finding a lot of hatred from the Infanta or Donna Clara. Therefore, Alexander von Zemlinsky's Der Zwerg and Oscar Wilde's The Birthday of the Infanta are both tragedies that show how much unrequited love hurts, especially if it's all about a dwarf wanting the pure and unconditional love of a princess who happens to be a major snoot and is not all that sympathetic. Now that I've talked about the story, my thoughts on the production. The approach to this Regie Theater production of Alexander von Zemlinsky's Der Zwerg mainly has the element of unrequited love and how much spurned love hurts the male protagonist. It starts off with a prologue of Alexander von Zemlinsky and Alma Schindler together in a music room. Alexander von Zemlinsky plays on the piano with Alma Schindler following suit. Just as there is a spark occurring between them, Alma ends up spurning him and thinking that he is just way out of his mind and is totally out of her league, even when Alexander presents her with a score dedicated to her. She wants nothing to do with his music or any of his affections toward her and spitefully walks away. This is also tied into the main story of the opera. However, instead of being set in 18th century or 17th century Spain, the entire story is transported to Spain in the late 2010s, specifically in a garishly lit music hall, and the Infanta coming off as if though she were a young socialite / social media influencer, considering the ubiquitousness of smartphones in this production. Don Esteban goes from being a major domo to being a sort of music intendant to ensure that everybody from the orchestra players to the guests to even Donna Clara and her friends themselves managed to have a great time as well as be well organized. The boldest approach of this production is how the dwarf is casted. There is the literal dwarf as an actor who is supposed to represent the outer appearance of the dwarf as well as his id, his overall identity. The singer for the dwarf is a completely different entity as he represents the superego, tall, dashing, with a beautiful voice and great musicality, and someone who is totally established as a great singer. And these are two sides that Donna Clara is confronted with, but she still sees the dwarf actor and the singer of the dwarf as one and the same person. She doesn't really want any romantic relationship with any of them, as she mainly sees the personal conflict that the dwarf actor and the dwarf singer have with each other as nothing more than entertainment, as if though she were watching a soap opera or a rather trashy reality TV show a la Jerry Springer or Steve Wilkos. The dwarf as the actor also demonstrates that he is a capable conductor, especially when he's accompanied by the dwarf as the singer, just letting his voice out, even as Donna Clara constantly spurns both of them and just sees the dwarf actor as nothing more than her plaything. And when the dwarf actor dies through being strangled by the dwarf as the singer, Donna Clara just ends up laughing it all off, especially when she sees the dwarf as the singer also dying from a broken heart. When she no longer wants to have anything to do with those two, she ends up leaving the room and popping her pink balloon to go back to her dance party. And interestingly enough, the white rose is replaced by a pink balloon, and both the colors of white and pink represent youth and purity, as well as unconditional love in terms of the color pink. And going back to the white rose, it is more of a symbol of purity and innocence. The choice of having Donna Clara carry a pink balloon is meant to emphasize her childlike innocence, juxtaposed with her teenage cattiness, as if though she were the queen bee of her clique, and could even give the likes of Regina George from Mean Girls, Courtney Shane from Jawbreaker, and Heather Chandler from Heathers a run for their money. And while I would have loved for this production to be set in 17th to 18th century Spain, complete with elegant costumes and gorgeous scenery, I still have to give some props to this production for making some interesting departures from the original libretto as well as from the original short story to still retain some of the timelessness of the story. So overall, there were some pretty bold decisions made for this production. The inclusion of a prologue between Alexander von Zemlinsky and Alma Schindler, who are going through such a difficult time with their relationship, especially when Alma shuns Alexander from his love, and the main story of Donna Clara also shunning the dwarf from his love, even with the dwarf trying so desperately to win over the princess. Both of these story elements do have something in common, in which the theme of unrequited love correlated with outward physical appearance continues to resonate throughout this opera production. Now we get to the singers, starting off with the titular dwarf, David Philip, and the actor, Mick Morris Minot. The dwarf really needs a full lyric tenor, let alone someone who is bordering on spinto, to sing over an orchestra. It would not be recommendable for a tenore leggero or a light lyric tenor to tackle the dwarf, because he's got a whole lot of big notes to sing, as well as dealing with a crazy tessitura. It's not super high, but he has to sing a lot of high A's, B flats, and B's with everything that he's got, and do so with sufficient power. This role is just as demanding as Edgardo Ravenswood from Lucia di Lammermoor, Alfredo Germont from La Traviata, Corrado from Il Corsaro, Carlo from Giovanna d'Arco, Zamoro from Alzira, De Grieux from Massenet's Manon, Jean de Lede from Meyerbeer's Le Prophète, Julien from Louise, Belmonte from Die Entführung aus dem Serail, Ferrando from Così fan tutte, Arbace from Idomeneo, Re di Creta, Marzio from Mitridate, Re di Ponto, and Tamino from Mozart's Die Zauberflöte, as well as Matteo from Richard Strauss's Arabella, because he needs to combine both lyrical singing and dramatic temperament. And any great tenor who dares to touch the dwarf should be able to unite beautiful lyric singing and great musicianship with dramatic intensity to make the dwarf an all the more understandable character and make his emotionally charged up moments all the more legitimate. And David Philip managed to steal the show tonight as the dwarf, as the singer. His voice continued to ring with power, beauty, virility, handsomeness, and a lot of thrills. I love the way he was able to cover his notes with everything that he's got. And there were even occasions in which there still was that semblance of the lyric tenor that he started out in the beginning of his career. There was that silvery edge that made him stand out so well, and the way he was able to cover his notes, complete with squillo and complete with great musicianship, managed to make him thoroughly stand out so superbly and do so in such a laudable manner. Equally as laudable was Mick Morris Minot, who was able to do a fantastic job making the dwarf a thoroughly understandable and thoroughly relatable character, given how much he pines for the love of the Infanta and wants so badly for her to love him, flaws and all, and he was able to accomplish the overall nuances of the dwarf as an actor with his poignancy and how much he was able to make me as the viewer relate to him on such a personal level. So bravo to both David Philip and Mick Morris Minot for jobs well done as the singer of the dwarf and the actor of the dwarf. Singing Donna Clara, the Infanta, was Elena Zalagova. And what you really need for the Infanta, or Donna Clara, is either a light lyric soprano or a lyric coloratura soprano, much like her Mozartian predecessors, Pamina from the Zauberflöte, Fiordiligi from Così fan tutte, Ilia from Idomeneo, Re di Creta, Aspasia from Mitridate, Re di Ponto, and Constanze from Die Entführung aus dem Serail. But it's not just those 5 Mozartian roles that Donna Clara would end up emulating, but also the youthfulness found in roles like Lucia Ashton from Donizetti's Lucia di Lammermoor, Amina from Bellini's La Sonnambula, Elvira Walton from Bellini's I Puritani, Louise from Charpentier's Louise, Manon from Massenet's Manon, Anna from Puccini's Le Villi, and Berthe from Meyerbeer's Le Prophète. And this is also combined with the more complex characteristics found in Violetta Valéry from Verdi's La Traviata, Medora from Verdi's Il Corsaro, Alzira from Verdi's Alzira, Giovanna d'Arco from Verdi's Giovanna d'Arco, Mathilde de Chabran from Rossini's Mathilde de Chabran, Corinna from Rossini's Il Viaggio a Reims, Aitra from Richard Strauss's Die Ägyptische Helena, and Zdenka from Richard Strauss's Arabella. So what you really need in Donna Clara is a combination of youthful girlishness and that more complex side to her that manages to show that she can be a manipulative queen bee bitch with all of that glamour and glitz and gorgeousness that she has about her, thus making her a somewhat nastier, cattier combination of Lucia Ashton, Manon Lescaut, Violetta Valéry, Constanze, and Pamina, especially considering the silvery tone that she has to maintain even in her more acidic moments with the dwarf. And Elena Tsalagova's artistry and unconditionally amazing musicianship continue to floor me, even if she's been taking much heavier roles like Elettra from Mozart's Idomeneo and Eva Pogna last year from Wagner's Die Meistersinger von Nuremberg. She was still able to maintain that gorgeous silvery tone that she has been renowned for and used it to her advantage to make the role of Donna Clara work effectively in such an amazing manner. Her trademark crystalline, clear voice continued to shine with beauty, elegance, and great dimension that I continue to be in utter awe of everything that she continues to accomplish. And she managed to do such an amazing job with embodying Donna Clara with her cattiness, as well as that type of attitude that makes her quite the young socialite, never to be messed with, but also makes me kind of fascinated by her, even though Donna Clara is not particularly likable. Therefore, Elena Tsaragova continues to be a great gold medal standard in terms of being one of the finest light lyric / lyric coloratura sopranos I have been listening to of today, as well as someone who continues to grow so exceptionally well as a singing actress, and someone who continues to preserve her sterling manner of singing excellently. Philip Yekal was a dashing and handsome Don Esteban, and Don Esteban does need a cavalier baritone who may not be too much of a big dramatic singer, a la someone who mainly specializes in a lot of the beefy Verdian or Wagnerian roles, but he should be someone who can sing beautifully and handsomely, as well as with a totally virile tone. He must combine the lyricism found in roles like Papageno from the Zauberflöte, Guglielmo from Così fan tutte, Morales from Carmen, Wolfram von Eschenbach from Tannhäuser, the Herald from Lohengrin, and the more dramatic singing found in Enrico from Lucia di Lammermoor, Riccardo from I Puritani, Francesco Moore from I Masnadieri, Count Dominic from Arabella, and Giacomo from Giovanna d'Arco, and the fine bel canto singing found in roles like Don Alvaro from Il Viaggio a Reims and Lutold from Guillaume Tell. So any good baritone singing Don Esteban must combine the lyric and dramatic to make his performance and characterization of Don Esteban function. And Philippe Yekal managed to continue to do such a fine job as a singing actor, complete with his fine stage presence and his constantly magnetic charisma. I've also seen him last year as Sixtus Beckmesser, and he also did a fine job in the role. Here, I thought he was able to do such a fine job in making the best out of Don Esteban, complete with his handsome stage presence and his great vocal charisma that made him work so effectively as a singing actor. In fact, I could also see a nice future for Philippe Yekal singing the role of Paolo Albiani from Verdi's Simon Boccanegra and Ford from Verdi's Falstaff. The Cavalier baritone roles are totally suitable for Philippe Yekal, and I also hope that he continues to receive some great inspiration from Herman Prey in terms of making sure that his singing continues to grow with virility and natural darkness. And I still have to give a lot of kudos to Philippe Yekal for taking great advantage of his dashing stage presence and making the role of Don Esteban work for him. Olga Bersmertna was absolutely gorgeous as Gita, and this role does call for a spinto soprano or a full lyric soprano who could also do the occasional dramatic coloratura soprano roles. She needs the silvery lyricism found in roles like Susanna from Mozart's Le Nozze di Figaro, Arminda from Mozart's La Finta Giardiniera, Micaela from Bizet's Carmen, and Liu from Turandot, and lest I forget about Musetta from Puccini's La Bohème, as well as the more assoluta singing found in Violetta Valerie from La Traviata, Giovanna d'Arco from Giovanna d'Arco, and Aida from Verdi's Aida, and the meteor spinto soprano singing found in roles such as the Empress from Richard Strauss's Die Frau ohne Schatten, Zante from Richard Strauss's Die Liebe der Danae, although this role can also be done by a dramatic coloratura soprano, and Elisabetta di Valois from Verdi's Don Carlo. And lest I forget about other florid singing roles such as both Marchesa del Poggio and Giulietta di Kelbar from Verdi's Un giorno di regno, and even the heavenly voice from Verdi's Don Carlo. So what you really need is a soprano who can be able to combine all of these facets, the flexible singing found in all of these dramatic coloratura soprano roles, and the meteor singing found in a great chunk of spinto soprano roles, and the focused and silvery tone found in a great chunk of full lyric soprano roles. And Olga Bersmertna was able to sell me tonight as Gita. Her voice just soared over that orchestra with a lot of beauty, clarity, and absolute wonder pouring out of her mouth. There was not one vocal flaw that I spotted from her. In fact, this full lyric soprano had been gaining traction in roles like Rusalka from Dvorak's Rusalka, Tatiana from Tchaikovsky's Evgeny Onegin, and Rachel from La Juive, considering that she also had her beginnings as a light lyric soprano with the role of Echo from Richard Strauss's Ariadne auf Naxos. And here she was singing a lot more full lyric soprano roles like the Countess from Nozze di Figaro, and even Freya from Das Rheingold. And she continued to shine with beauty and with a whole lot of grace. I would even love to see her one day as Elsa from Lohengrin and Eva Pogna from the Meistersinger von Nürnberg, and lest I forget about Elisabeth from Tannhäuser. The future definitely looks bright for Olga Bersmertna, and her voice shone with absolutely wonderful beauty and great clarity throughout all the registers. And she also had great balance of tone and a whole lot of clarion beauty that made her stand out tonight in the best possible way. Suajo's clarion first maid, Ariana Manganello's creamy toned second maid, and Stephanie Wake Edwards' sufficiently chesty third maid managed to be absolutely great vocal wonders from all three singers, and they were able to make the best out of their music with everything that they've got, considering that Suajo's beautiful full lyric soprano voice radiated throughout the orchestra and did so with great beauty and great clarity. Ariana Manganello's creamy tone was also radiating with excellent musicianship pouring out of her mouth and everything that she embodies, and Stephanie Wake Edwards' fine technique being put to fabulous use, and all three of them did amazingly as the three maids, and Stephanie Lloyd's and Margarita Graina's superb work done as the two girls who were also friends of Donna Clara. And I dare not forget about the fine acting accomplished by Evgeny Nikiforov's poignant Alexander von Zemlinsky and Adele Esslinger-Ronnickel's Alma Schindler, in which they were able to put their acting skills to great work, as well as their equally fine piano skills also to great work, thus making their chemistry thoroughly shine. So overall, the singing was excellent all the way through. Major props seriously have to go to David Butt-Philip, Elena Zalagova, Filip Yekal, and Olga Bersmertna for doing such amazing jobs as the pivotal roles of the dwarf, Donna Clara, Don Esteban, and Gita. They were able to radiate and shine with everything that they've got, complete with superb technique, as well as a whole lot of great musicianship pouring out of their mouths and embodying everything from top to bottom with everything that they've got, and doing so with elan and excellence. Equally as great were Suajo, Ariana Manganello, Stephanie Wake Edwards, Stephanie Lloyd, and Margarita Graina doing such amazing jobs respectively as the three maids and the two girls. Everybody managed to do excellent jobs all the way through, and I also must applaud Mick Morris-Menat, Evgeny Nikiforov, and Adele Esslinger-Runnels for doing such fabulous jobs as actors. A pluses all around from all the singers and all the actors, and here's also hoping that they continue to polish their craft as well as stay as sterling as always. The conducting done by Donald Runnels was absolutely exciting and thrilling to the bone. He definitely knows how to play up that big brassy orchestra and do so with elan and a lot of excitement. There is never a dull moment with Donald Runnels. Some might complain that his conducting tends to be a bit too big and loud, but in terms of what he was able to do with the orchestra, he was able to provide a lot of excitement from beginning to end and do so with a lot of flair and charisma. And what more can you say about the chorus and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin? Everybody managed to chip in so handsomely, complete with great professionalism and a whole lot of outstanding, superb, and wonderful musicianship pouring out of each and every one of them. So overall, tonight's performance of Alexander von Zemlinsky's Der Zwerg at the Deutsche Oper Berlin was absolutely wonderful. From the singers who were able to contribute their wonderful musicianship and define each of their characters with dimension and interest, to the production, which although I am not a huge fan of Regietheater, still managed to make a great amount of bold moves, as well as some interesting choices, considering the choice of having the singer as the dwarf and the actor as the dwarf being two completely different entities, but still embodying the same person, and the story still being as timeless as ever. If you are hankering for watching a production of von Zemlinsky's Der Zwerg, I might recommend this to you only if you know the story as well as what the original setting should look like. You might as well come in with an open mind to not only appreciate the staging, if you might, but more than anything, you might as well come to this production to appreciate the great singing, especially when it is offered by Elena Talagova, David Philip, Filip Jekal, and Olga Besmirtna, unless they forget about Sua Jo, Ariana Manganello, Stephanie Wake Edwards, Stephanie Lloyd, and Margarita Graina. Everybody did a fine job, and it was an absolutely amazing evening to catch everybody doing their absolute best. And for those of you who caught this performance of Alexander von Zemlinsky's Der Zwerg at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you feel like the staging was quite interesting to look at? And did you also enjoy some of the decisions made of this production? Did you also feel like the singers were all at their A game, whether it was Elena Talagova or David Philip or Filip Jekal, or even Olga Besmirtna, Sua Jo, Ariana Manganello, Stephanie Wake Edwards, Stephanie Lloyd, and Margarita Graina? Did you also feel that David Philip, Elena Talagova, and Filip Jekal stole the show from everybody's feet? Or did you feel like this opera, let alone this production or the singers, were not really to your liking? Please let me know in the comments below. Well, that's it for my review of Alexander von Zemlinsky's Der Zwerg at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. Tune in tomorrow for my review of Thomas Cheluffo's Advent Concert at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. So until then, good night everybody and happy holidays!